Okay, number 7. Now this one's pretty straightforward. Resources should be used as efficiently as possible. So we want to be able to produce as much goods and services as possible from our resources, and also produce the goods and services that people most want, like the things that people will get the most satisfaction from. Okay, so resources are used efficiently if every opportunity is taken to make people better off without making anyone worse off. Okay, so we want people to be better off and not worse off, right? That would not be efficient if we did something that made people worse off. All right, so for example, these ice cream cones. Suppose I had some ice cream and I didn't want it. So it would be efficient to let other people have it, right? Rather than just letting it go to waste. And so I should give other people the opportunity to enjoy the ice cream. Even if just one person eats all of the ice cream, it would be efficient. So there's a difference between efficiency and being equitable or fair. To be equitable or fair, I would divide up the ice cream so that everybody would get the same amount. Or I could just give it all to one person. Now, both of those situations would be efficient. Okay, so efficiency does not require an equal or fair distribution of the resource. It just means that somebody's using the resource to become better off. Okay, so there's a difference between efficiency and equity. And efficiency is not improved by taking the ice cream away from someone. So suppose that I wanted all the ice cream and I sat down and I started eating all the ice cream, even if there were people around me who wanted some ice cream. Now, if they got mad that I was eating all the ice cream and they came and took some of the ice cream away from me, that would certainly make it more fair, but it would not change the efficiency. If I have it all, or if I divide it up and share it with other people, both of those situations would be efficient. Okay, now often there's a trade-off between efficiency and equity. Okay, so we'll go through some examples here. Now, at the beginning of the chapter, we were talking about the difference between a market and a command economy. So command economies have more equity because the government tries to ensure that the resources are distributed more fairly. But these economies are not efficient. So they're not efficient, first of all, in production, because when the government is in charge of production, they're not very good at running businesses. They're not very good at making sure that costs are as low as possible, and they're not innovative. And without innovation, the economy and production cannot increase, and the economy cannot grow. So in terms of production, a command economy is not efficient. But it's also not efficient in terms of what they are producing. Are they producing what the consumers most want? No, of course not. When governments are making decisions, they just make very broad decisions like, okay, we're going to make bread, and we're going to make this much bread, and we will make this kind of car, and everybody, if they want a car, they will have to get this kind of car. Right? It's very different from a market economy where the businesses have to sell their goods and they're very concerned about making as much profit as possible. In a command economy, remember, the businesses are run by the government. The government keeps the profit, not the people. But in a market economy, it's the people that keep the profit. And they keep profit and they make profit by producing what people will most want to buy. So businesses make the things that give us as much satisfaction as possible. Okay, plus production is more efficient because the businesses want to be innovative as well. Okay, now next example is disabled parking. So in front of buildings, there's usually nice big parking spaces for people with physical disabilities. So these spaces are often empty though, right? So it's not really an efficient use of space, but they're there for the purpose of providing people with disabilities a more equitable access to the building. Okay, and then the last example is taxes. So in a country like Canada, we pay a lot of taxes. And taxes are one mechanism for making society a little bit more equal because richer people pay a lot more taxes than poor people. But the poor people often benefit a lot more because they're benefiting from social programs or free education, free healthcare. Well, not free, but they don't have to pay directly for it. And so by taxing the rich people more, the government is able to provide things like education and healthcare to everybody. But taxes are not that great for the economy, so that's the trade-off. Taxes make things more expensive, and when things are more expensive, people buy less, and when people buy less, then there's less produced, and so on. So they're not that great for the economy. So that's the trade-off. Okay, so taxes equalize resource distribution, but discourage production and consumption. Okay, so taxes decrease the efficiency of the economy, but increase the equity in the economy. Okay, number 8, markets usually lead to efficiency. Okay, so we've talked about these terms now. So a market is when people are able to buy and sell goods from each other. And efficiency means people are as well off as possible. And so markets make us better off by giving us opportunities to buy and sell goods. Okay, so markets give people opportunities to gain from trade. And then people take advantage of these opportunities, which is what efficiency is based on, right? Letting people make themselves better off. So people take advantage of all opportunities to make themselves better off. Okay, so then through the market, we are reaching a more efficient situation. So markets usually lead to an efficient allocation of resources. Okay, now I put the word usually here because it's not always true. Now, if we're talking about simple goods and services that are not harmful at all, then it would be true. So the market for toothpaste, for example. People can buy toothpaste, people can sell toothpaste, everyone is better off, nobody is worse off. Great. But there are some goods and services that do make other people worse off. So cigarettes would be an example. If the government let everybody just smoke cigarettes wherever they wanted, it would make other people worse off. This kind of a situation is called market failure. And this can be helped by government intervention, right? The government can just make some rules and regulations. Okay, so in some situations, when individuals take advantage of opportunities to make themselves better off, they make others worse off. And that is not efficient then. Okay, so free markets are not efficient. That's what we mean by market failure. Okay, so by free market, what we mean is letting people do whatever they want, right? Buy and sell whoever they please. And so again, for something like toothpaste, that's fine. But for something like cigarettes, that is not fine. Okay, there's other examples here. So natural resources like fish. Right? If we let people catch as many fish as they want, we'd run out of fish. So we cannot allow a free market for that. Free markets that cause pollution, that causes harm to everybody, so we can't allow that. Okay, so the solution is simply that we can't always have free markets where people can do whatever they want. We have to have some government intervention in terms of rules and regulations, safety regulations, and so on. Okay, so governments can impose regulations to improve social welfare. All right, on the next page we have some true and false questions. All right, first question. Because Canada is a rich nation, free healthcare can be provided for all citizens without considering the issue of scarcity. So that, of course, is not true. Now, we don't really have free healthcare. It's not really free. We pay taxes, which pay for the healthcare system. And so, yeah, so it comes with an opportunity cost for sure. Okay, so that is false. The study of economics arises because of the necessity for choice, and the necessity for choice arises because of the fundamental problem of scarcity of resources. Totally true. All of it is true, true, true. Okay, number 3. In 1 year, Parliament passes a tax cut. That means they decrease taxes. Since taxes were reduced, Canada did not incur any opportunity cost from the decision. No, there's always an opportunity cost. So if they reduce taxes, I mean, that's great, except that the government would then have less money. And if they have less money, they can't do as much. Right? So they would have less resources for building roads or providing healthcare and so on. Okay, number 4, a trade-off involves weighing the costs and benefits. Yes, yeah, that's what a trade-off is. You have to decide one thing or another thing. You have to think about the costs and benefits of each option. Okay, economists make predictions about individual behavior based on the assumption that people exploit opportunities to make themselves better off. Okay, now the first sentence is fine. That's good. People with the same opportunities should therefore always make the same decisions. No, definitely not that part. Because people have different preferences, right? Everybody likes different things. So even if you have the same opportunity as your friends, you will make different decisions. Okay, so we have to say that that is false. In equilibrium, there will be no further opportunities for gains from trade. Okay, so that's true. And equilibrium means that everybody has already done everything they can to make themselves as well off as possible. So there's no other opportunities left. Okay, an economic situation is in equilibrium when no individual would be better off taking a different action. Yeah, that one's true as well. Okay, just a different way of saying it. Market equilibrium will always be efficient, even if it is not equitable. Now, the problem here is the word always. If it said usually, then we could say fine, that's true. But because it says always, we're going to have to say it's false because we can think of examples where it's not true. And we just talked about those examples. Fish, cigarettes, right? Situations in which people can cause harm to other people. So with fish, a free market would allow people to just go and catch as many fish as they wanted to, and then we'd run out of fish. And so that's obviously not an efficient situation. Okay, so this will be false. Okay, an economy is efficient if one person could be made better off by reallocating resources without making anyone else worse off. Okay, now this one's a tricky one because it kind of sounds right, but it's not quite right. And the reason why it's not quite right is could be made better off. It means it hasn't happened yet. The person is not better off yet. It means the opportunity is still there and they haven't taken the opportunity yet to be better off. So if it said has been, like they've already been made better off, then it would be true. But because it says could be means it hasn't happened yet. They're not better off yet. They're not as well off as they could be. So it's not yet true. So we have to say it's false. Okay, last one. Market failure occurs when the pursuit of self-interest by producers and consumers leads to bad results for others. Yeah, so just like the fish example I was just talking about, right? If you let people catch too many fish, we'll run out of fish. Okay, so the last part of the chapter is about some macroeconomic type principles, so more about the economy as a whole. All right, so principle number 10, one person's spending is another person's income. All right, so I get paid to teach this course because you guys have paid tuition. And in the future, you guys will have your own businesses or you'll be working for a business. And in order to make money, you need to get revenue, and that it comes from the consumers. So I might be buying things from you. Okay, so everyone is interdependent then, right? People are interdependent, meaning people's actions influence other people's outcomes. Okay, so this is great, except when there is a recession, which we might be in right now, or the beginning of one. But this example is about the last major recession. Was started in 2008, and it began in the housing market in the United States. So before this, the housing market had been booming and prices were really high, but then there was a financial crisis. It doesn't matter about the details. Anyway, so the housing market turned around then and started going down. Like prices were going down. People were not able to buy as many houses or as big a houses as they used to. Right? Fewer people were buying houses. Okay, so that would have an impact for people who produce houses. Okay, so less incomes were made in the building industry. All right, so people lost jobs in the building industry. An example right now, because of the coronavirus, a lot of restaurants have closed, for example, right? So a lot of the people who work in restaurants don't have jobs anymore. And it doesn't just influence them, though. It influences other people, because those people who were construction workers or restaurant workers would otherwise have income and be out spending the money, and now they're not. So people who used to sell goods to the restaurant workers or to the construction workers, they will not have as much income because they're not selling as much to these people. Okay, so less goods and services are purchased, which means less incomes are made by other people selling these other goods. So, for example, for a construction worker, maybe they used to buy shoes and now they can't afford to buy shoes. So the people who sell the shoes have less income. And then because the people who sell shoes have less income, they can't afford to buy as much of other things. Right? So other people in the economy end up being affected by this. Okay, so less incomes are made by people in the whole economy. And then it's a cycle that continues, and pretty much everybody in an economy is affected during a recession. Everybody becomes poor. Okay, so the governments can help. Government intervention is possible and can help. And usually this involves financial assistance. So the government might help give businesses loans or just subsidies, like just helping them by giving them money to do certain things. Or the government might reduce taxes so that people have more money for spending on things. Or another thing the government can do is spend more money itself to help to stimulate the economy. So the government could take this opportunity during a recession to, say, fix bridges or to build new roads, things like that, where they would employ people. And then more people would be able to get a job and their incomes would go up and they would start buying things, and that will help to reverse the cycle. Okay, now the opposite of a recession is when the economy is booming and the economy experiences inflation. So inflation at low levels is just fine, but really high inflation is not. It creates a lot of instability for an economy. So inflation levels are usually maintained, or central banks try to maintain them just at low levels. Now, the problem with inflation is it's caused by people trying to buy more than the economy can actually produce. So spending can be more or less than the economy's productive capacity. And when the spending is more, it means people are demanding more than the economy is able to produce. That will create shortages, and shortages will drive up prices. Okay, so inflation occurs when people want more goods than the economy can produce. And the opposite is if people expect a recession, then they will spend less than the productive capacity. Okay, so inflation is when the economy is booming and there's too much spending, and then a recession is the opposite problem. There's not enough spending. Okay, so last thing is about the government policies that can help in either situation. So first one, if the economy is in a downturn, the government can spend more on, for example, education or healthcare, and that will help to increase incomes and spending. Okay, and the other thing is they could tax less. So we mentioned that was mentioned on the previous page. Okay, so spend more or lower taxes. I'm writing using my mouse, just in case you're wondering why my writing is so messy. It's very hard to write with a mouse. I don't have a proper stylus. Okay. So spend more or lower taxes. Okay. And then the opposite. So during an inflationary period when people are spending too much, the government can do the exact opposite. They can increase taxes or spend less. So they can spend less or raise taxes. And that will decrease incomes and spending. Okay, now we have an exercise on the next page. Which of the 12 principles is at work? Okay, so we've just gone through 12 principles, and what you have here are situations. We're just going to see which of the principles is would best describe what's going on. Okay, by early 2008, the Canadian economy was in a significant downturn, and the government wanted to stimulate the economy in a positive way. They gave tax rebates, that means lowering taxes, to some Canadians who paid taxes in 2007, while increasing the goods and services tax credit. So again, that lowers the taxes. Which of the 12 principles is described? Okay, so this is about government intervention during a recession. So that was the macroeconomic principles that we just talked about. So 12 and 10 was about a recession. Okay, some products like tobacco are taxed by the government. All right. Now, in Canada, if you buy cigarettes, you pay an extra high amount of tax. Now, why is that? Well, it's mostly that the government doesn't want you to smoke cigarettes, and so they're trying. Okay, so number 4, the government wants to give people incentive to not smoke cigarettes, not just because it's bad for them, but it's bad for other people as well. So that was number 9, when your actions cause harm to other people and the government needs to intervene. Okay, an apartment complex included a fixed price of water in the monthly rent. So fixed price means like say $100 a month. Whether you used a lot of water or only a little bit, you paid the same amount. One day, the city decided to attach a water meter. Now that's going to measure the amount of water you use to each individual apartment and charge the tenant for actual water usage. As a result, water usage in the apartment complex went way down. Yeah, so okay, so what's happening here? Well, now they have an incentive to use less water. So when there was a fixed price of water, there was no incentive to use less because they paid the same amount whether they used a lot of water or only a little bit of water. But now, because they're paying for actual water usage, the less water they use, the more money they will save. So they have an incentive to use less water. One other thing though is now the water usage has a marginal cost. So deciding how much water to use is a marginal decision. You're thinking about, do you want to take a long shower or a short shower? And there's a marginal benefit to having a nice long shower, but there's a marginal cost because you actually will have to pay for it. Whereas before with the fixed price, you didn't have to pay any more for that extra long shower. Okay, so 3 and 4. Last one. A university student waits in line for hours to purchase a ticket to the Grey Cup. So Grey Cup is a football game in Canada. But an attorney does not. Rather than spend hours in line, he purchases a much more expensive ticket through a ticket broker. All right, so what's going on here? It's a difference in time, right? So when you're a university student, compared to being an attorney, the cost of your time as a student is a lot lower because your time is more flexible, first of all, right? You could stand in line and study at the same time, but it would be really hard for the attorney to do work while standing in line, and the attorney makes a lot of money compared to a student who doesn't make much money. So the attorney would have a much higher opportunity cost of their time compared to the student. Okay, so opportunity cost, that was principle number 2. All right, one more exercise. Okay, so this last exercise is about linear algebra, and this is the kind of calculations you will have to do for the course, right? You have to be able to do this. And lots of you guys will be just fine with it. You might be very comfortable with it already. If you're not very comfortable with it, then there are some extra practice questions like this on Moodle, and there's the assignments that you can do that have some practice questions as well. Okay, so linear algebra means an equation for a straight line. So we're given one here. And with these equations for a straight line, you need to be able to graph it and find points on the line. And if you have 2 lines that cross, you need to be able to calculate the equilibrium. Okay, all right, so here's our function. And first thing, it says to solve for x as a function of y. Now, the way it is written here, we have y as a function of x. So x as a function of y is just the inverse of this function. Okay, so to invert the function, we will take the x term to the left side, and it's negative here, so it will become positive on the other side. And we'll take y to the right side, and it's positive here, so it'll be negative on the other side. Okay. Good. Okay, and so now what we need to do is divide both sides by 0.5 because we want to have x by itself. Oops. So 0.5x divided by 0.5 equals 10. We're going to separate these terms because that's just usually how it's done. All right, so now on this side, the 0.5 and divided by the 0.5, so that will cancel out. We'll just have x. And then 10 divided by 0.5 is 20 minus, and then y over 0.5, or that would be the same as 1y divided by 0.5, and 1 divided by 0.5 is 2. So that would be the same as 2y. Good. Okay, so there's our answer. Okay, the y variable goes on the vertical axis, that means straight up and down, and the x variable goes on the horizontal axis, that's across. Okay, so let's go graph it now before we're doing anything else. Now this line is going to slope down, and we know it's going to slope down because of the negative sign. Okay, now this number here is going to be 10, right? The y-intercept is the constant here. So when x is 0, y will be 10. Okay, that number is 10. And then the x-intercept is going to be the 20 from here, right? So when y is 0, x will equal 20. Okay, so that's that intercept. Good. And okay, so that answers these questions here. So y-intercept is going to be 10. Oops. 20. What is the slope of the function? So the slope of the function is the number in front of the x, oops, minus 0.5. Good. Okay, now what is y if x equals 4? Okay, so let's say 4 is about here. And we want to know what is y at that point. So we're finding a point on the line. Okay, so x is 4. What is y at that point? Okay, so we just use the function. Okay, so the function is y equals 10 minus 0.5 times x, and x is 4. All right, so y will equal 2. Okay, next question. What is x if y equals 4? Oh, what am I doing? Shoot, sorry. That's 8. Never mind. Okay. What is x if y is 4? Okay, so let's put that. Y is 4. Okay, so what is x? I'm just going to put on the graph first. There. Okay, and we just use the function again. Now we can use the other equation, the one that we inverted. So x equals 20 minus 2 times y, and y is 4. Okay, so that will equal 12. Now, last question. A second equation is y equals 2 plus 0.3x. Graph and calculate the equilibrium. Okay, so let's draw this on the graph first. So y equals 2 plus 0.3x plus, so it's a line that goes up, and the y-intercept is 2, so that'll be about there. I don't know exactly where it's going to go yet, but I'll just draw it like that for now. And the y-intercept is 2, right? So when x is 0, y is 2. So this number here is 2. Okay, and so what we need to figure out is the equilibrium. and we're going to calculate the y and the x at that point. Okay, so equilibrium means the two equations are equal. So the first equation from the top of the page, 10 minus 0.5x equals our new equation, 2 plus 0.3x. Okay, so now we just want to combine the x terms and the constants. So I'll take 2 to the left side. We're going to subtract it on the left side. And I will take minus 0.5x to the right side, and we're going to add it. Okay. All right, so that will mean x equals 8 divided by 0.8 will be 10. And then to calculate y, we can use either equation because we're calculating the equilibrium, so we can use either equation. Okay, so using the first equation, y equals 10 minus 0.5 times 10 equals 5. Okay. But if we use the other equation, we should get exactly the same answer. Y equals 2 plus 0.3 times x, which is 10. And yes, that equals 5 as well. Okay, so the equilibrium is at 10 and 5. Good. All right, we are all done chapter 1.